Well, hello, Hamza.
Hey, Robert.
Man, it's been a lot getting to this. I know I randomly sitting in a some fish place in the middle of like San Jose, California, trying to
Right.
talk with you, do a little pre-production. But man, it's finally good to be sitting here with you, and we want to talk to you about your book, Paperless Builders.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to,
Hey,
just having fun conversations and talking about how we move this industry forward.
right. Well, that's obviously what we all want to do. And I read it. I cover to
Nice.
cover. And you got my little notes in here. But I wanted to ask you real quick because I do think it kind of kicked this off. I do think one of the most important things, and you put it in here, constructability is the biggest elephant in the industry and no one wants to talk about it.
Nobody wants
Okay.
to talk about it.
That one hit home for me in so many different ways. So kind of tell me a little bit, the thought behind that and what's your plan?
I that's a big one, right? And talking about how fragmented the industry is in terms of designing things, and then he's like, I don't know. I mean, literally, like they don't care how this is going to be put together, and just shipping it off to a contractor to figure that out. And that's where you get tons of RFIs and clarifications and give me more information because this is not constructible the way it's designed. And I believe it stems from two main you know issues that the industry has not really addressed yet. And that's what I'm hoping is like technology will enable us to address a lot of these issues. The two main things is one is the disconnect between the design team, engineering team, and the field team. A lot of the designers don't know and frankly don't care how things are being built in the real world in the job site, right? It's like, no,
Right.
I'm designing things. So they meet the requirements, they meet the specs, they meet the code. These are the things that I care about. How do they be put together on the field? That's not my problem. That's not my job, right? They don't know how it works in the field, but also they don't care a lot of times.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is that disconnect between um, how much effort, and I mentioned that also is like a little bit in tracking design hours. I think this is kind of the crux of it because a lot of the design firms base their contracts based on number of design hours. And if they reach that limit, they're like, that means the design is done. Let's ship it out. It doesn't mean that it's complete. It just means they reached that limit of spending the design hours on it. Of course, it is encompassing. It involves all the required materials and the required program to help that design for the owner side, but it does not help from a constructability review standpoint. And
Right.
that's where I think in the future, hopefully, is I think the AI layer is really going to uncover those two issues in terms of sharing some of that feedback from the field team to the design team to the engineering, saying, here's what worked, here's what didn't, that can inform the next design. So that's number one. Number two is having that constructability review early on, like between the design and the construction phase. I believe, and this is a prediction, you call it prediction, is there going to be a whole market in between those two that
Right.
call it simulation, call it analysis, constructability review, whatever it is. There needs to be an entity that does that analysis before we go into construction to make sure that all the information are here, all the materials can be sourced in that area, all the labor exists. It's there's a lot of different variables that goes into it, not just from the design side. But that's what I'm saying is like AI will really help expedite that analysis cycle and hopefully kind of solve that problem.
Well, I hope so too. I don't know if we get specific about just the design portion of this. Like, I don't know how many times I had run into, I have a set of prints in front of me, which, your favorite thing, that 2D set of prints that comes in. And I know I'm old school. I bet, back in the day,
Yeah,
just,
it works.
but in the 2D set of prints, and, you've got your first few pages, kind of the overall, and then you start to get into the specifics, right? And I don't know how many times I get into the specifics, and it's almost like you said, it's like they got to a certain number of design hours and said, well, okay, we're just going to throw it back here, and hopefully they don't ever really see it, or when they do, we'll just have another meeting
Right.
designed around the design, and by that time, especially if it involves, subcontractors, obviously, or even a specialty contractor of some sort.
Yeah.
My big one was there was always some copper something that needed to be made, or something out of stainless steel where you needed a specialty, a true artist or something to, make the design work. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be another 6 weeks on the job, just getting this person engaged, not to mention the fact that the design doesn't work, right? It's not even feasible. So that just stuck out to me amongst from the read. I was like, oh yeah, I'm highlighting that one because I definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for highlighting.
But so I think that you're on to something, for sure. There are some things that I don't, and I want to talk to you. You've got in the book, you've got the builder's framework, right?
Yeah.
Now, my take on it was it's a nice guideline for, you've got processes and you're going to be evaluating your next piece of technology, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of give me a background. Is this designed for like the mid-sized company, small size company? Who's it designed for, and kind of what was the intent behind it?
100%. So the book starts with my favorite quote. It's not really a quote. It's my favorite saying. I hope somebody quotes me on it, which is for the betterment of the industry, right? So that's what
I'll quote you on it.
That's the intent. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I spent so much time and effort in compiling all of that, is for the betterment of the industry. And my main audience, and I mentioned that several times, is that mid to small size companies in general in the AEC industry, right?
Right.
So whether it be designers, engineers, construction managers, specialty contractors, utility providers, owners, who have it, right? And the idea is that it's really like technology is going to level the playing field. It's going to help those small size GCs compete with the mid-size and the large even GCs on projects because they can deliver more with less, right? They have the technology that can enable them to do a lot more than that what they usually, being constrained on by the number of resources that they have. And that's the idea here, is like I explained, so it's the why, the what, and the how of construction technology. So I started with the problem statements and then what solutions exist out there to solve those problem statements. But the last part is kind of like that user guide. And there's a lot happening in the construction ecosystem. There's a lot of problem statement. There's a lot of technology providers. How do you even start looking at that, right? So that's where the builder's framework came from. And it starts with benchmarking. It starts with B, benchmarking, which is understanding the processes, understanding where your bottlenecks are and what are the paper-like and paper-based processes that are really holding you back and creating those inefficiencies. And once you highlight those, you need to, but of course, you can't do that without the users. So that's the you and builders talking to the people and validating those process maps and those bottlenecks and prioritizing the problem statements that you want to solve for. There's a cycle here though that goes between benchmarking and users, because you're constantly going to be going back and forth and prioritizing. And then even after you find that specific pain point and solution that you want to solve for, now you're going to do the cycle again, but for finding a technology provider or technology partner that can help you solve it. And it's also like another recurring cycle of let's talk to them, let's make sure that the team is on board. You have to get that buy-in before you move to the next stage of builders, which is the I. I is an implementation plan. So this is instrumental to making sure that pilot projects go according to plan, because you have to start from the beginning, you have to say who's going to be doing what are the roles and responsibilities, what does success criteria look like, and then what is the timeline, what the projects that we're working on. Once you establish that, you move into the next one, which is learning. You can't establish anything. You can't start using any tool or technology without knowing how to do so, right? So learning is important and onboarding. And then D is driver. You have to have somebody that is championing that pilot, and not somebody from my perspective. It's not somebody from the innovation team, from the technology team, from the IT team. This needs to be a driver from that team that is actually going to be implementing that technology, and kind of being in the trenches with the folks that are using it. And then you go to E, which is evaluation. Have to constantly collect that feedback in a methodical way. That leads to R, which is reporting. And, compiling everything that you've learned and everything that you've done in one single report that you can share with everybody else is important. And then the last part is S for scaling. Again, that's optional. That's why it's in parentheses, because if it works, that you can go to that next step of scaling.
Right. Well, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit here. I want to talk because I think I definitely know that you're onto something. I did a webinar. I call it the 8 steps to software implementation success. It
Nice.
wasn't quite as cool a title as yours, but I agree with you in these are the things that need to happen. But here's my business side of me, the guy that owned my own company for 12 years, right?
Okay.
There's a lot in the core competency factor. I'm sitting here, I'm a business owner. I don't care if I'm a small contractor or if I'm a medium-sized contractor. I got a lot going on just in my core competency, right? And finding the people and finding the people to, kind of be that driver. Now, I know there needs to be a leadership member involved in this. Yes. Whether you're a CIO, a CFO, whatever that is, whatever leaders, kind of whatever software you're leading the charge on or technology you're leading the charge on, got to be somebody there. But you also need that team of champions within that company that says, yes, we're going for this. We're going to make this happen. And a lot of times, and this is just from my experience, a lot of times that team tends to be pretty small, or maybe even non-existent. Like, hey, this is something, and I think maybe this is the issue. This is something that gets thrown on somebody because, hey, you're good with computers. You do this,
Exactly, yeah.
So you kind of, tell me your thoughts around that, I guess.
Yeah, so you're talking about it in terms of like, how do you, because you can't find the drivers. A lot of times it's hard to find the drivers. Those are like really rare and far in between. But there's the 2 different approaches to implementing technology, right? There's what you just talked about is like top down, right? It's like executive leadership. They think this is the valuable thing and we need to be implementing and we need to be using it today, and go mandatory SOP. We're all using this today. And that works sometimes, right? Especially like, and I mentioned that also is like, especially when we're talking about foundational technology, like an ERP system or system of record in terms of project management platform. Yes, that would work, because you can't convince everybody that this is the way to go. You just have to say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're using. Get on the train or get off, right? It's like,
yeah, that's right. Get on the bus.
Right. Yeah. But so that works for the foundational kind of like the bigger pieces, right? Is like, this is how we're going to collect our data. This is how we're going to file an RFI, stuff like that. SOPs, standard operating procedures. That's great. It does not work for point solutions. You're talking about like a technology that does a single simple thing, but it does it really, really well, because different people are going to have different interpretation of why we need this, and is it even worth their efforts? And you need to acquire that buy-in, and that I've seen that firsthand, right? So we've tried that top-down approach of like, here's what we needed to use, get on the train or get off, and it didn't go so far, right? Because they will, if they're not bought in, they will find every point and every hole in it that says, here's why it's not going to work. And they will find a way to break it.
Yeah.
But that's why I mentioned, like, you have to talk to them and you have to make sure that they understand what's the problem statement that we're trying to solve. It's not about the technology. It's not about the tool. It's about the problem statement. It's about making their jobs more efficient. Happier people that, efficient people are happier people in general. And it's just like that, creating that buy-in so they can say, yes, I want to use it. And that's your bottom up approach of technology, and having them pull the technologies out of you instead of them pushing them on them. So it's just a different approach for the different types of technologies. I'm not, one is, better than the other. It depends on the situation and the technology that you're trying to implement.
Very good. Well, okay. So now let's talk about that. Let's talk about that whole, you got the buy-in process, let's say there. Now we're into that situation of, okay, cost. Right now, technology, there's, AI is still a bit out there to extend to, I would say, the small to medium size, but at some point it's gonna be there, but there's still going to be a cost factor that these folks are going to have to overcome and go, we need to bite the bullet on this. Now, why should they bite the bullet becomes the question. Why should I bite the bullet? What is going to be my return on investment of something like this over the next 3 to 5 years, right?
Yes. The return on investment is very simple: is keep up or be left behind. It's going to get to that point, Robert. Is like, if somebody's not catching up to the technologies that are being implemented, they will very quickly find themselves out of business, because they just cannot continue to compete in a market that looks completely different than the one they're used to 5 years ago. And that's why I mentioned, is like, you have to get on this wave that's coming now, instead of waiting for it to crash on top of you. The idea of ROI is a tricky one, because when you're implementing technologies, and I've seen that firsthand too, is like, we're spending what, 20, 30K on a pilot project. How much is this going to save me? Show me within that lifespan of the project that we're doing, how much money did that save me?
Show me the money.
Right. It's not, but it's not one-to-one, right? It's not one-to-one. It's not like an immediate direct ROI in that specific, especially for technologies that are going to prevent us from doing something stupid. It's like, how do you measure that? Right. It's like, how many did we have? I don't know. It's like, it all goes back to retroactively and trying to find similar projects that had similar outcomes. It's a long-term play, is all I'm saying. So ROI,
it's tough to measure soft cost, right?
And you can't measure it on a single project either. So that might show you something, but it's not going to be a tangible ROI that you can go back to executives and say, we need to scale this today. It's usually going to be like, oh yeah, this actually helped me, and it's very soft things, just word of mouth things. It's like, this actually made it easier for me to find certain information, or to file that, or to, whatever it is. But that's when I talk about it, is like, failure is part of the process too. So when you implement the technology, you are going to fail. Your productivity is going to dip at the beginning of it, because people are, they don't know how to use it. They're still trying to figure it out. There are things that are going to go wrong that we need to adapt to. And then, if you continue to push for it and you continue to use it, you're going to start seeing that productivity go back up. And that's why I say, it's like, ROI, don't focus on ROI on the piloting phase. It's all about that, especially as you said it, like those intangibles, those soft, metrics that are like, is this really helping you, complete the project on time, on budget, and with quality.
And that's what I love about this type of conversation, because this is not only good for construction people, but it's good for technology people as well. Technology people need to understand, hey, there is a bottom line that you're going to have to meet at some point, and there is a point when you've got to meet that. Right. And there is sometimes with some softwares or some technologies that diminishing returns, right? Where it's like, hey, this just ain't going to make it. It's not going to work. Also, you run into the thing is like, you have to be on the construction side of things. You have to let construction people know, look, we realize we're going to realize our mistakes inside of this, not necessarily just in the software, but we're going to realize our mistakes in our processes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that, Hamza. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to know that they're actually not as efficient or they're
Yeah.
not as good as they thought they were. We like to call them the gold helmets. They they're
Nice.
just not right. They don't like to. Nobody likes a finger pointed at them and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, that this process didn't work, and here's the numbers to show it." Nobody
Yeah.
likes that. That's a big hurdle to overcome, right?
Yeah. And that's why I started the whole book with chapter 1. Change is hard. I'm giving it to you straight from chapter 1. It's like, don't expect this to be an easy ride. Don't
Yeah,
expect overnight success. Don't expect people to jump on this bus like immediately. It's a long-term play, and it's something that, you're going to have to face a lot of challenges, face a lot of egos, face a lot of people that are going to push back and say, no, I'm as efficient as it can be, and
yeah.
that's just
So
part of the game.
yeah, so and then I want to talk about that too, though. So this is a long-term play, right?
Yeah,
But we're also talking about we don't have a lot of time to get this thing turned around with the speed at which technology
yeah,
is moving as compared to the speed. A lot of these bigger companies out there are out there. They're killing it with digital technologies, and they're moving forward, and they're trying to drag their little brothers along, those kind of things. But it's like, hey, you don't have a lot of time left here to kind of get on the bus.
yeah.
And so I wanted your thoughts on that, because you know you guys at your company have been doing a bunch of stuff,
Yeah,
and not you've been more than just writing this book, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
disrupt tech, I kind of want to ask you about that a little bit, but you guys
Yeah.
are engaging in technology at your company. So kind of give me a thought on that. Like, did you guys just say, hey, we've got to go do something? Or did you stomp into the boss's office and pound on his desk? Like, what happened there?
Oh, I wish I can take credit for that. It's just this. It all comes back to, as you mentioned it earlier. It's like leadership, and if you have executive leadership that has a vision, that knows where we're headed and how technology is going to play a part in that. So they didn't know exactly how technology is going to play a part in this, but they knew that it will. And that's kind of what drove this kind of innovative culture within Haskell. Is like new leadership. In 2018, they got promoted from within, and they said, let's look at where we're at today, and let's look at where we're going to be in 2025. So they set the 2025 vision, with one of the pillars that's focusing on is being on the cutting edge and the leading in the innovation and technology adoption. And that's kind of how they knew, after doing some research, is like you have to stand up a separate entity. That's where I work, Disrupt Tech. Separate entity from Haskell, but it's still, again, wholly owned and operated by Haskell. But we are tasked by looking outside and being the bridge between our employees here within Haskell and the entire technology ecosystem out there that's happening, with
Yeah.
the mantras that we have, the 3 I's that we talk about, which is invest, invent, and innovate. So we make investments in terms of time and effort and budgets to pilot these projects. So we have a dedicated budget just for piloting technologies and collecting that feedback and reporting on it. And we also make capital investments in some of these startups that we find to be valuable. And then we invent, is like when we have a problem statement, and it usually comes from the third I that I'm going to get to. When we have a problem statement that we don't have, like there is no market solution for it, it's like that's when we switch hats and we actually go into developer mode and create that technology for our employees. And then the last I is innovate, which is having that structured innovation program within the company that we ask our employees to submit ideas. And it could be anything that enhances the bottom line to anything that's about entering a new market. And we evaluate a lot of these ideas, sit down with each and every one of them, and select the top 5 and get them to kind of present Shark Tank style in front of our executives, and select one and kind of fund that and
Yeah,
get
no
the
pressure there.
yeah.
No pressure there on that
No
one.
pressure
Shark
there.
Tank style. Yeah. Love it.
It's a fun event that we have
Yeah.
every year.
Do you actually get to say, yeah, on this one, I'm out? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have our judges, our executives, kind of listen to all the 5 pitches before they make a decision on each one,
I got you.
and then kind of come together and pick a winner.
So that kind of triggers my idea. So I just attended a symposium in California,
Okay.
the PPI group. I don't know if you know those folks, the Project
I've
Performance
heard of them.
Institute. Yeah, they're in the lean construction
Yeah.
space, right? And it's a nice group of folks. I learned a whole bunch. One of the presenters
Did
there.
you meet Todd Zabel there or no?
Yes, I met Todd. He and I connected on LinkedIn here just recently, and of course, I spoke with him at the conference
Yeah.
briefly.
Another highly recommended read for Built to Fail.
I built, yeah, I read it. So
Awesome.
I try to, if you've got a book out there, like I try to read it.
Yeah. Great.
So, but what was interesting, they had a speaker there we was talking about, and he's going to be a guest coming up in January because I engaged with him as well. But he was talking about how we really need to start looking at the people in the field to help with ideas about how to solve these things. And I don't think it's just on the physical nature of the project. His ideas were about the physical nature, how they were, prepping materials in order to get them to the thing. And, there was a lot of bottlenecks, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that there's a lot of knowledge out there engaging with, technology about, hey, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
How can we make that work better? And I think that's a valuable idea. And some companies may not, do an outreach, right? But I think that's very, very valuable. So, like your experience with it at Haskell, I mean, I'm sure that's very, very interesting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we get a lot of ideas from the field teams, and mostly as you said, it's like I'm doing something this way. A lot of times they don't even know what the exact solution is. It's like there has to be a better way, and we evaluate that, and we usually kind of pair them with some technology and stuff. But reaching outwards, I think a lot of these startups that we're talking to, or anybody can be talking to right now, is like they have latched on a problem statement, right? It's like they're not in the market to look for a problem statement, right? It's like they have a very specific, clear problem statement they're solving for, and they have a solution. And they are usually adept to getting that feedback and adjusting and morphing and maybe pivoting. So we work with some companies that we say, hey, I see you're focusing on this. This is a good solution, but here's another problem statement that's very adjacent to it. That can you help us solve it? And we see a lot of good positive feedback from that, in the sense that we're giving them the feedback and they're implementing and changing, and we're continuing to kind of work with them into morphing even a different product, or like the same product that solves for something slightly different than what they started with. So yeah, there's a lot of valuable feedback that we can get from the field, and the more technologies that you put in front of them, the more feedback you'll get on how to make it better, how to make it more impactful. But it also opens up their minds, like, what else can I be improving, right? And
Yeah,
what else is a pain point for me that I
right.
can talk to these guys and help find technologies that can help me, solve it better.
Yeah. I think, yeah, the open dialogue is very, very important.
Yeah.
That on anything, when especially in the construction industry, I think more and more so there was a way of doing business, right? The way of doing business was you just stick to your job and I've got the rest of this handled.
Yes.
And then now more so, we're changing our idea of that kind of leadership style. And it's changing the idea of, hey, I hear what you're saying. Let's, right now let's focus on this, but let's get back to your ideas and let's pass
Yeah.
them, let's move them up the chain where they need to go so that we can really evaluate if
Yeah.
you're onto something, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Absolutely. We have great leadership here within Haskell that, they don't really get stuck on the details of the how, right?
Mhm.
It's like, I just need this outcome. You, as the person closest to the problem statement, need to figure out how to get to that outcome or even exceed it. That would be amazing if you can. But that question that comes from the servant leadership at style, which is like, how can I help you achieve that? Right? It's like, what blockers, what resources, what technology that I can provide you to reach that outcome. And it's just really that open dialogue and back and forth that makes it um, a good culture for people to kind of work and thrive in.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think you guys at Haskell have got a great culture going on. ENR did a feature on you guys a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Crazy growth in the southwest sector. I mean,
Yeah.
what is that all about? What's going on there?
We just have an amazing team, and yeah, we continue to have executive leadership that buys into the vision of, like enable the employees to do their best, not harp on them to this is what I need you to do. Yes, we have standard operating procedures and policies and stuff, but it's really results driven rather than being very rigid in a sense. And we've seen tremendous growth, and we're continuing to grow year after year. So we're excited to see that.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to keep an eye on it for sure. I think it's fantastic. I did truly enjoy your book.
Thank you so much.
And you're onto something, right? You really are. You're really onto something. And I will recommend it to anybody that I know, whether they're, small business, medium-sized business. It's a great guideline. I like the builders acronym. I think it works great, even though I did have to look up what benchmarking meant.
Yeah, I was torn between benchmark and baseline, but I chose benchmark.
There we go. Okay, see, baseline one might have been right up my alley. Well, listen, man, I really do appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy man, obviously, between writing books and disrupting the industry in many different levels. You got a lot to do, but I'm glad you shared some time with me today. I always like to have folks come back and want to talk with you maybe later next year and kind of get back with you, kind of see how things are going, see what's changed. We'll talk about something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to jump back on here. And anybody who wants to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. The only Hamzah Shanbari, hopefully, and LinkedIn, so you can connect with me very, very easily.
Very good. Well, I will definitely put links to the book. It's available on Amazon. I got it delivered, and then I will put links to your LinkedIn if they want to reach out to you as well. Man, awesome. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate the invite.